What 22 ANZAC soldiers witnessed that afternoon would change their lives forever. What British High Command classified within hours would become one of the war's best-kept secrets. What military intelligence worked desperately to contain remains hidden to this day. Tonight, I'm going to share testimony that's been sealed in Commonwealth military archives for over 100 years. Testimony about an entire battalion that marched into a stationary cloud and disappeared without a trace. 800 men, no bodies ever recovered, no equipment found, and 22 witnesses who maintained the same story until their deaths. August 12, 1915, Gallipoli Peninsula, Ottoman Empire. The Suvla Bay offensive was entering its 8th day of operations. British forces under General Sir Frederick Stopford were attempting to break through the Ottoman defensive line and link up with ANZAC positions stretching along the rocky coastline. The 1st Battalion of the 5th Norfolk Regiment had received orders to advance on Hill 60, a strategic position dominating the bay with clear views toward the Aegean Sea. The terrain was an arid hillside with sparse vegetation and sightlines extending for miles in all directions. Observation conditions were exceptional for that sector of the front. The weather was unusual for the region at that time of year. Completely clear skies, total absence of wind, temperature approximately 35 degrees Celsius. Military observers noted the absolute calm of the air, something uncommon on a peninsula exposed to constant maritime currents. This absence of wind would become a crucial detail in understanding what was about to happen. At approximately 15-20 hours, everything changed irreversibly. But before revealing what happened at that precise moment, it's necessary to understand who the primary witness was and why his credibility was unquestionable. Sergeant Frederick Reichardt, 28 years old, from Christchurch, New Zealand. He'd enlisted with the 2nd Canterbury Battalion in September 1914, sailed to Egypt in October of the same year, and landed at ANZAC Cove on April 25, 1915, during the initial landings that marked the campaign's beginning. He'd survived the initial landings when Turkish machine guns turned the beaches into zones of mass death. He'd fought at Quinn's Post, one of the most dangerous sectors of the front, where the distance between enemy trenches was reduced to less than 10 meters at some points. He was known among his men as meticulous in his observations, a former surveyor who kept detailed field notes with professional precision. He'd witnessed Turkish artillery turn entire beaches into human slaughterhouses. He'd seen men die from dysentery, sniper fire, and shrapnel. He'd experienced the horrors of trench warfare in conditions of extreme heat and scarce drinking water. But nothing had prepared him for what he'd witnessed from his observation post during the afternoon of August 12th. At approximately 15-20 hours, Sergeant Reichardt was in charge of an observation post on Rhododendron Spur with panoramic views over the approach to Hill 60. Visibility was exceptional at that moment. He could clearly distinguish Turkish positions over 2,000 yards away with his standard field binoculars. The Norfolk Regiment had begun their advance at 15:05 hours, 800 men in march formation, advancing toward the base of Hill 60 in perfectly ordered columns. The dust their boots kicked up was clearly visible against the arid terrain. Then Reichardt noticed something completely impossible according to the laws of physics he knew. A cloud formation, completely stationary despite the total absence of wind, positioned directly over Hill 60's crest as if it had been placed there with deliberate intent. He immediately called his section commander, Lieutenant Arthur Markham, to observe the phenomenon. Lieutenant Arthur Markham, 24 years old, from Auckland, confirmed the sighting immediately without any doubt in his voice. What they observed over the next 18 minutes defied everything they understood about meteorology, physics, and modern warfare. The cloud wasn't moving at all.
All other cloud formations in the sky were moving southeast at approximately 8 knots, following the region's normal wind patterns. This formation remained absolutely stationary, positioned with precision over Hill 60, like a solid structure suspended in the air. What was about to happen would defy all rational explanation and change the life of every witness forever.
They weren't alone in witnessing this extraordinary phenomenon. Before 1600 hours, 22 men from 5 different ANZAC units would document the same observation with strikingly consistent details. By 1800 hours that afternoon, every one of those reports would have been confiscated by British intelligence in a coordinated operation. Within 2 months, the first witness would be dead under questionable circumstances. Reichardt's field notes, kept in his personal diary and later donated to the New Zealand National Archives in 1962 by his widow, described the cloud with almost scientific precision. The formation measured approximately 800 feet in length and 400 feet in width, perfectly rectangular in shape, as if it had been cut with precision instruments. Its base was positioned at approximately 200 feet above Hill 60's crest, floating in the air without any visible support. The color was described as solid gray, markedly different from normal cloud formations that are more translucent and changeable. Most significant of all was that it had defined edges, sharp, precise edges that normal clouds never exhibit due to their nature as dispersed water vapor. Reichard noted in his diary with these exact words, "The cloud appeared as if it had been cut from metal and placed over the hill with mathematical precision." The Norfolk Battalion continued their advance without altering their formation. According to testimony from multiple ANZAC observers positioned along the spur, the regiment was marching in column formation directly toward Hill 60, completely oblivious to what awaited them. At approximately 1538 hours, the vanguard companies began ascending the rocky slope. They entered the base of the cloud formation. The cloud didn't dissipate as a normal water vapor formation would upon contact with solid objects. It didn't move an inch from its position. It remained completely stationary as 800 men marched into its interior. Reichard observed through his binoculars as company after company disappeared into the gray mass. He could see the last ranks entering the cloud at 1545 hours. The khaki uniforms gradually became invisible as they were absorbed by the gray formation. Then, the cloud began moving in a way that violated all known laws of atmospheric physics. According to sworn statements from Corporal William Nunes, 3rd Australian Light Horse Division, the cloud rose vertically toward the sky, not drifting with the wind as any normal cloud formation would. Ascending in a perfectly straight line at approximately 15 feet per second, a speed and trajectory impossible for a mass of water vapor. At approximately 1550 hours, the cloud had ascended to an estimated altitude of 4,000 feet above sea level. Then it moved northeast at tremendous speed that observers calculated at over 100 miles per hour, disappearing toward the Sea of Marmara within seconds. The entire movement, from its stationary position to its final departure, took less than 3 minutes. 3 minutes that would change everything these soldiers thought they knew about reality. The Norfolk Regiment had disappeared completely. The 800 men had simply vanished. When ANZAC units advanced toward Hill 60 later that night to verify the situation, they found absolutely nothing on the terrain. No bodies of fallen soldiers, no abandoned military equipment, no shell craters indicating an artillery attack, no blood on the rocky ground, no signs of combat of any kind. The hill was completely empty and silent.
as if 800 men had never existed in this world. But Reichardt wasn't the only witness to this extraordinary event. The incident was observed from multiple ANZAC positions, extending along approximately 3 miles of ridgeline, providing different perspectives of the same impossible phenomenon. But what High Command would do with these testimonies would reveal a pattern of suppression that continues to this day.
Private Thomas Anderson, 2nd Canterbury Battalion, positioned on Bawcops Hill, reported identical observations in a letter to his brother dated August 15, 1915. His letter described a cloud like a solid loaf of bread floating motionless over Turkish lines, defying all logic. His letter noted he observed the Norfolk Battalion walk into the cloud as if entering a building with solid walls. Corporal James Hartley, 1st Australian Division, at an observation post near Lone Pine, filed a report describing the cloud as metallic gray, with edges so sharp they seemed drawn with an engineer's ruler. His report noted the cloud's upward movement was perfectly vertical, as if it were being lifted by hidden machinery. Lieutenant Harold Morrison, 1st Canterbury Battalion, was photographing Turkish positions when he observed the complete phenomenon. His photographs were developed at division headquarters with startling results. They showed the cloud formation with absolute clarity, confirming the other witnesses' descriptions. The photographs were immediately classified and removed from his possession without any explanation. Lieutenant Morrison requested their return through proper Army channels. His request was denied with the official notation, "Material required for military intelligence analysis." The photographs have never been located in any Commonwealth military archive, despite multiple searches conducted by historians in subsequent decades. Even Turkish soldiers observed the phenomenon from their defensive positions. Ottoman military records, captured after the war and archived at the Imperial War Museum in London, include reports from the Fifth Army describing unusual cloud formation at 1540 hours on August 12th. Their report noted British forces disappeared from observation during advance on Hill 60. Their report contains no mention of combat engagement, artillery fire, or any tactical action that could explain the disappearance of 800 men within an 18-minute span. Turkish commanders were as perplexed as ANZAC observers about what had occurred. Hit that subscribe button if you want to discover how the witnesses of this event were systematically silenced, because what's coming reveals the most elaborate suppression machinery of the Great War. By 1700 hours on August 12th, reports from 22 separate witnesses had reached various ANZAC and British Command headquarters along the Gallipoli front. The pattern was undeniable and deeply disturbing to military authorities. Something had been observed by dozens of trained soldiers across miles of front line, something that violated all known principles of meteorology and physics, something that defied conventional explanations and called into question the very understanding of reality. The response from British High Command was immediate, coordinated, and absolutely ruthless. Every report was classified with maximum security priority. Every witness was instructed to maintain absolute silence under threat of court-martial and possible execution for treason. And the process of eliminating testimony began that same night with an efficiency that suggested prior planning. Within 12 hours after the incident, intelligence officers from British General Headquarters arrived at ANZAC positions along Rhododendron Spur in a coordinated operation. Captain Edmund Blackthorne of the Intelligence Corps conducted extensive interviews with all identified witnesses. What these interrogations revealed about the level of suppression would change each man's life forever. Those who survived the war remember the interrogations with absolute clarity decades later. Private Anderson, interviewed in 1964 at the age of 72 for the New Zealand Broadcasting Service, described the process in chilling detail. He stated verbatim, "They took our written statements, our diaries, our letters, anything mentioning the cloud was confiscated without possibility of appeal." The captain told us that discussing the incident would be considered dissemination of information prejudicial to military operations, court-martial offense, possible execution for treason in wartime. All field notes were seized without exception. Personal diaries, sketches, letters to family members, anything documenting the event was confiscated under military authority backed by the Defense of the Realm regulations. No receipts or documentation of what was confiscated were offered. Sergeant Reichart vigorously protested the seizure of his personal diary, arguing it contained private information unrelated to military operations. His commanding officer, Major Edwin Thornton, overruled his protest, citing Defense of the Realm regulations that granted absolute authority to military intelligence. Reichart filed a formal complaint with the New Zealand Expeditionary Force Command requesting review of the confiscation. The complaint appears in 2nd Canterbury Battalion records dated August 14, 1915. The official response to his complaint doesn't appear in any records. It's as if it was never processed. Witnesses were separated and reassigned to different units in an operation suggesting coordination at higher command level. Reichart was transferred to the 1st Otago Battalion on August 20th. Lieutenant Markham was sent to Egypt for medical evaluation on August 22nd. Corporal Nunes found himself attached to the Imperial Camel Corps, deployed to Sinai for desert operations. The official explanation for these transfers was urgent operational requirements. The real effect was to scatter witnesses across the entire Mediterranean Expeditionary Force, ensuring they couldn't compare notes, coordinate testimony, or support each other in their claims.
The elimination pattern began quietly but inexorably. The first witnesses started dying under circumstances that defied conventional explanations. Sergeant Frederick Reichart, 28 years old, 2nd Canterbury Battalion, Christchurch. He documented the sighting in his personal diary with a professional surveyor's precision: sketch maps, compass bearings, exact timestamps, detailed weather conditions. His entries for August 12th filled 6 complete pages of meticulous observations. When intelligence officers confiscated the diary, he immediately wrote a detailed account in a letter to his wife Sarah, describing everything he'd witnessed. The letter was sent via military mail on August 14th with the hope that at least his family would know the truth. The letter never reached its destination in New Zealand. Postal records show the letter registered at Suvla Bay Field Post Office with correct date stamp. It doesn't appear in any subsequent sorting records throughout the entire distribution chain. It simply disappeared from the military postal system. But what happened to Reichart would reveal that suppression didn't stop at document confiscation. After his transfer to the 1st Otago Battalion, fellow soldiers reported Reichart became withdrawn and distant. According to Corporal Michael Stevens, interviewed in 1958, Reichart stopped talking about what he'd seen, but you could tell it tormented him constantly. He'd stare at clouds for hours, searching for something. In a letter to his brother dated October 3, 1915, Reichart wrote words that would resonate tragically. "There are things I witnessed that I'm forbidden to discuss. If something happens to me, you must know I tried to tell the truth about what I saw."
During the third attack on Hill 60, November 27, 1915, Reichardt was killed in action. The official cause recorded was Turkish sniper fire. A single headshot from approximately 900 yards distance, an extraordinary feat of marksmanship. Trajectory analysis conducted by the battalion medical officer noted the shot came from a northwest bearing from ANZAC-controlled territory, not from Turkish lines. This disturbing conclusion was included in his official medical report. The medical officer, Captain James Peterson, formally requested an investigation into the suspicious circumstances of the death. The request was denied by division headquarters with the notation, "Insufficient evidence to warrant investigation." No additional explanation for this decision was offered. Captain Peterson died 3 weeks later in an accidental drowning at a water transport depot in Alexandria. He was an experienced swimmer who'd competed at university level. The depot was 3 feet deep. The circumstances of his death were never officially questioned. Reichardt's personal effects, including his replacement diary documenting the period after August 12th, were scheduled for return to his widow in New Zealand, according to standard military procedures. The shipment never reached its destination. Postal records show the package registered in Alexandria on December 10, 1915. No subsequent tracking information exists in any archive. The package simply disappeared without a trace, like the 800 men on Hill 60.
Lieutenant Arthur Markham, 24 years old, 2nd Canterbury Battalion, Auckland. He was Reichardt's section commander and the second witness to observe the cloud formation. He filed an official report through proper military channels on August 13th, describing the phenomenon in meticulous detail. His report included specific requests for professional meteorological analysis and a complete follow-up investigation. The report was sent to British General Headquarters per established procedures. It appears in the Received Documents Registry, but can't be located in any Commonwealth military archive, despite exhaustive searches conducted by historians in subsequent decades. After being sent to Cairo for medical evaluation, Markham was diagnosed with acute nervous exhaustion and delusional episodes. Medical records from General Hospital No. 15 describe him as coherent and rational in all matters except his persistent claims about atmospheric phenomena from August 12th. He was evacuated to England and admitted to Craiglockhart War Hospital near Edinburgh in October 1915. His medical file notes, "Patient exhibits no signs of combat trauma, yet maintains detailed accounts of impossible meteorological events." In letters to his family, obtained by the Auckland War Memorial Museum in 1983, Markham described being repeatedly interrogated by military intelligence officers during his hospitalization. He wrote verbatim, "They want me to recant. They want me to say it was battle stress, exhaustion, anything but what it really was. I won't lie about the truth." Lieutenant Markham died at Craiglockhart on January 18, 1916. The official recorded cause was pneumonia complications. Hospital records noted been in total isolation for 3 weeks before his death, receiving no visits and no external communication of any kind. The isolation was ordered by military authorities, not by hospital medical staff, an unusual decision for a patient who posed no contagion risk. His autopsy report was sealed and classified until 2006 under official secrets laws. When it was finally released after 90 years, it contained sections so heavily redacted the cause of death paragraph was completely blacked out with ink. What actually caused his death remains officially unknown.
Smash that subscribe button if these elimination patterns are unsettling you, because the most shocking decision and the peak of the cover-up haven't been revealed yet. Private Thomas Anderson, 21 years old, 2nd Canterbury Battalion, Dunedin. He observed the cloud formation from Beauchamp's Hill and documented it in a letter to his brother in New Zealand on August 15th. The letter described the event in exhaustive detail and included a sketch of the cloud's rectangular shape, estimated dimensions, and departure direction. His brother, David Anderson, preserved the letter for 50 years before donating it to the Otago Settlers Museum in 1965. The letter became the most detailed civilian testimony of the incident, providing documentary evidence outside military control. After the letter was written, Private Anderson's behavior changed noticeably according to fellow soldiers' testimony. According to his tent mate, Private Robert Hughes, Anderson became paranoid, insisting we were being constantly watched. He burned most of his correspondence and stopped writing home completely. In his last letter to his brother, dated September 2, 1915, Anderson wrote prophetic words, "If I don't survive this, tell them what I saw was real. Tell them 800 men didn't just disappear. Tell them the cloud wasn't natural or explainable by known science." What happened to Anderson during the Gallipoli evacuation would reveal the full extent of the cover-up. During the evacuation of ANZAC forces from Gallipoli in December 1915, Private Anderson disappeared under circumstances that defy all logical explanation. He was last seen boarding a transport ship at North Beach on December 19th with his complete unit. His name appears on the ship's manifest, with confirmed embarkation recorded. The ship arrived in Alexandria without reported incidents. No casualties, no medical emergencies. Yet Anderson never disembarked at the Egyptian port. He simply disappeared during a routine sea voyage on a ship that arrived intact. He remains listed as missing in action, though the ship arrived safely and reported no casualties or incidents during the voyage that could explain a soldier's disappearance. His brother, David Anderson, spent 40 years attempting to obtain information about his disappearance. Every inquiry to military authorities was answered with exactly the same phrase: no additional information available. No explanation, no investigation, no accountability, only absolute institutional silence.
Corporal William Nunes, 26 years old, 3rd Australian Light Horse Division, Melbourne. He was positioned on Walker's Ridge when he observed the cloud formation and the impossible vertical ascent. He documented the event in his field diary, noting precise times and compass bearings of the cloud's departure. His diary entry stated verbatim, "The cloud moved upward like a solid object being lifted by invisible forces. No natural cloud moves that way. No mechanical device I know of could achieve such movement with that mass." After the incident, Corporal Nunes was reassigned to the Imperial Camel Corps and deployed to Sinai for desert operations. Fellow soldiers in the Camel Corps reported he became obsessed with constantly observing the sky. According to Private Jeffrey Martin, interviewed in 1968, Nunes stared at cloud formations for hours on end, drawing them, timing their movements, searching for something he'd never find. In a letter to his sister dated February 14, 1916, Nunes wrote, "I can't speak of what I witnessed, but I can't forget it either. They moved 800 men. Where? That question haunts every moment of my existence." Corporal Nunes died during a patrol near Romani on April 23, 1916. The official cause was dehydration and exposure to extreme desert heat. His patrol returned intact to base as scheduled. He didn't return with them. His body was found 3 days later, 15 miles from the established patrol route, in terrain the patrol never entered according to official records. Autopsy findings were inconsistent with dehydration, according to the medical report. The report noted signs of acute trauma that couldn't be explained by environmental exposure. The assistant surgeon, Major Richard Blackwell, formally requested a complete investigation into the medical discrepancies. The request was denied without explanation by higher command. Major Blackwell died in a vehicular accident in Cairo 2 months later, under circumstances never clarified. His medical notes on Corporal Nunes were reported destroyed in a warehouse fire in 1919. The fire occurred exactly 1 week before the notes were scheduled for transfer to the Australian War Memorial as part of the Historical Archive.
But the elimination pattern didn't stop with direct military witnesses. Lieutenant Harold Morrison, 31 years old, 1st Canterbury Battalion, Wellington. He was the photographer who captured images of the cloud formation, physical evidence that could have irrefutably proven the phenomenon's existence. After his photograph's confiscation, he attempted to file a formal protest through New Zealand Expeditionary Force Command. His protest was rejected with the official notation, materials required for ongoing intelligence analysis. No estimated return date or additional explanation about the analysis's nature was provided. Morrison survived the entire war and returned to New Zealand in 1919. He resumed his pre-war professional career as a commercial photographer in Wellington, establishing a successful studio. It seemed he'd escaped the elimination pattern that had claimed so many lives. In 1922, he began preparing a memoir of his war service, including an entire chapter dedicated to the August 12th incident. He contacted other survivors to gather additional testimony and corroborate his account with multiple independent sources. He filed Freedom of Information requests to access classified military records, arguing his right as a veteran to document his own war experience. The requests were systematically denied without substantive justification. On July 3, 1923, Morrison was killed during an alleged robbery at his photography studio. The perpetrator was never identified despite a police investigation lasting 3 weeks. No witnesses saw the assailant enter or leave the building. Most revealing was what wasn't stolen. Photography equipment valued at hundreds of pounds sterling remained intact and untouched. Cash visible in the desk drawer wasn't taken. Only his war documents were removed, including all draft chapters of his memoir and all his correspondence with other Gallipoli veterans about the Hill 60 incident. The investigation was closed after 3 weeks with no suspects identified, no motive established, no follow-up. The case remains officially unsolved over a century later. The Hill 60 incident wasn't an isolated event in the broader context of World War I. Between 1914 and 1918, military records contain references to at least 14 similar disappearances of complete military units under inexplicable circumstances that defy conventional explanations. Vaux Mountains, France, October 1914. A complete company of the 87th French Infantry Regiment, approximately 200 men, disappeared during a night advance in mountainous terrain. No bodies were recovered. German records show no combat engagement in that sector during that time period. Carpathian Mountains, Eastern Front, January 1915. 400 men from the 28th Austro-Hungarian Infantry Regiment vanished during a mountain patrol in clear weather conditions. Search patrols found no human remains or equipment, despite clear weather and well-documented patrol routes. Flanders, Belgium, June 1916. The British Royal Warwickshire Regiment lost a complete platoon of 54 men during a trench raid. The platoon never returned to Allied lines. German positions showed no signs of combat. The no man's land section was 30 yards wide, a distance that could be crossed in under a minute.
The geographical spread was enormous, spanning multiple theaters of war across 3 continents. The timeline spanned the entire war from 1914 to 1918. Official explanations, when they existed, were completely inadequate to explain the documented facts. Units listed as missing in action or lost during combat operations despite no evidence of military engagement existing. Disappearances attributed to confusion of battle in areas with clear sightlines and well-documented positions on military maps. The common thread connecting all these cases, witness testimonies suppressed through intimidation and classification, investigations blocked by high-ranking military authorities, records classified or conveniently destroyed. And the suppression pattern didn't end with the war.
You're watching this now because you sensed something was missing from the official war stories. The horror of the Gallipoli Campaign is well documented in history books. The failed landings, the dysentery that killed thousands, the extreme heat causing heat stroke, the 250,000 total casualties on both sides. But there was another layer to that military disaster, one that's been systematically erased from the official historical narrative through decades of classification and institutional suppression. 22 ANZAC soldiers saw 800 men march into a stationary cloud that defied the laws of physics. They saw that cloud rise vertically and disappear at impossible speed toward the horizon. They saw Hill 60 completely empty afterward, with no bodies, no equipment, no evidence those 800 men ever existed in this world. Their testimony was suppressed not because it was unreliable, but because it was too consistent among multiple independent witnesses. They were silenced not because they were wrong, but because they all reported exactly the same impossible event, with disturbingly matching details. And the suppression pattern continues operating to this day, over a century after the event. In 2006, historian Dr. Margaret Clark filed a formal petition to the British Ministry of Defence requesting declassification of Gallipoli intelligence reports corresponding to August 1915. The petition was backed by 3 universities and multiple veterans organizations. After 3 complete years of bureaucratic review, the request was denied in its entirety. The ministry's official response stated verbatim, "Release of the requested material would be contrary to the public interest and could compromise national security." How could documents about events from over 100 years ago still threaten the national security of a modern nation? What information do those files contain that justifies their perpetual classification? These questions have never been answered by authorities. Files that have been partially released through Freedom of Information requests are so heavily redacted they contain more black ink than legible text. Complete paragraphs are blacked out, names are censored, dates are removed. Documents specifically covering August 10th through 15th, 1915 in the Suvla Bay sector are completely absent from the official record. They're not classified, they simply don't exist in any archive inventory. They'd been eliminated entirely, as if those days never happened. August 12, 2026 marks the 111th anniversary of the disappearance. The date carries specific numerical significance, 111, that's attracted attention from researchers examining patterns in unexplained military disappearances throughout history. There are indications that August 2026 may witness renewed attempts to access sealed Commonwealth military archives related to the incident. Freedom of Information requests have been filed in Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, timed to coincide with the anniversary and leverage media attention. Whether August 12th will bring document declassification, continued suppression of truth, or simply another anniversary of hidden history remains to be seen.
But for those who recognize the suppression pattern, for those who understand what was witnessed and concealed for over a century, the date carries significant weight.
Drop a subscribe if this video changed your perspective on what really happened at Gallipoli, because every week we break down the stories military governments don't want you to know. Leave a comment with these exact words: Hill 60 remembers. Nothing more, just that phrase. It's a signal to others who are watching, to the algorithm itself, that you understand what they tried to hide, that you see the suppression pattern that's operated for over 100 years. Don't elaborate, don't add explanation, just the phrase. Those who know will recognize it and understand its meaning. August 12, 1915, over the arid hills of Gallipoli, ANZAC soldiers watched 800 men march into a cloud and vanish from the known world. Those men are gone now. The last Gallipoli veterans died decades ago, taking with them any living testimony that could have confirmed what military authorities suppressed. But their written words remain, hidden in sealed files, redacted documents, and records most will never access. I've accessed them. Through years of research in multiple countries, I've traced the suppression pattern through decades of institutional cover-up. I've documented the systematic elimination of witnesses who threatened to reveal the truth. And now you know too. The question is, what will you do with that knowledge? August 12, 2026 is approaching fast. Watch for developments. Remember the witnesses who were silenced. And when the pattern repeats, because it will repeat eventually, you'll recognize it for what it truly is. The truth they tried to bury under a century of military classification, convenient coincidences, and suspicious witness deaths. The Gallipoli witnesses tried to tell us the truth about what they saw. They were silenced through intimidation, classification, and physical elimination. Their message remains buried in files that will likely never be fully declassified. We are not alone in this universe. We've never been alone. And on the hills of Gallipoli during the Great War, that truth became undeniable for 22 men who paid with their lives for witnessing it.